Welcome to the Honor It All podcast. I'm Honor Garrett, your host, and we're here to honor all that is good in the world. Each podcast, I interview top professionals around the globe who are making a difference, impacting lives, and creating positive change. Today, we have Michael Guthrie. He is a CEO and broker of Howard Hanna Roy Wheeler Realty Company in Charlottesville, Virginia. Michael is also a real estate GRI instructor and motivational speaker. Michael writes an inspirational blog and has an incredible story of resilience. What I think makes Michael so incredible is his integrity as a person, somebody that you can trust, and his commitment to his faith, his wife, Dottie, and his entire family. I'm so honored to have you here today, Michael, as part of the Honor It All podcast. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great, Honor. It's just a real privilege to be here, and I obviously we've been friends for a long time, but I've been following just in the last several months as you've launched your coaching career and the positive things that you're sharing with folks, and I've also been just incredibly impressed with the way that you've expanded your network, whether it's be through Instagram or through your podcast or through Clubhouse. It's just been real fun to watch how you've expanded the network, and the number of people that are following you and that kind of thing is something that you should be really proud of.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I've really enjoyed reconnecting with you through Clubhouse. And I know that you always somewhat stay connected to my husband through just the beautiful emails and the blogs that you do, and the inspiration that you periodically send to him. So I know he appreciates that. And first, I want our listeners to know that really, we've known each other for a long time. I think we first met back in 2005.
When I came back to Charlottesville.
Right. And my husband was assistant coach for UVA football, the Virginia Cavaliers, wahoo wah, that we still love and follow.
That's hard for you to say with a Tar Heel at home. So.
Yes, I am a Tar Heel. And I have I'm graduated from Chapel Hill, and I have one. But when you marry a football coach, you change allegiance with every football team, or you know what, you just have a special place in your heart for every place you go.
Exactly.
So that's the way I like to look at it. But is that your recollection of how we met? I can't.
Yeah, absolutely. When I came back to Charlottesville, we reconnected in kind of an interesting way. Obviously through football and through the things that I was involved with Fellowship of Christian Athletes and helping coaches and athletes, not in any sort of paid capacity, but just something I love doing, and God's given me that opportunity. But in the meanwhile, the connection got even stronger when I realized that John and my brother played football together at Princeton. So Kevin was at Princeton from 81 to 84, because you didn't play as freshmen back then. And so Kevin is still very, very good friends with John, and especially Jason. Kevin still goes back every summer and is involved with the camp that Jason does in Princeton. And so that connection just, got even tighter. And then with Harry, being on FCA staff, so the Garrett family is near and dear to me. I'm grateful for John, and yes, I try to send him stuff from time to time. It's interesting, as running a podcast, doing the things you do, you don't know whether it's making a difference or not. And then all of a sudden, John will send me a text saying, man, I just want you to know that I don't always respond, but what you're doing makes a difference. And that just, is sort of like God patting you on the back a little bit, saying, just keep going. And, obviously we do things unconditionally, right? We're doing it. We're putting the things out. You're saying, honoring all the good things in the world. My thing is a little bit different, but back in 1983, I guess, when I first got in the real estate business, you didn't have computers, you didn't have any of this stuff, but I had a little note above my phone that said, have you made a positive difference in the world today? And that was just my mantra from early on. And when I got in the real estate business, I realized this was a business that I could have success, that I could support my family, but that I truly could make a positive difference in the world every day, which is what I believe that God had called me to do. So I think you and John are great examples of that. John has, just such a servant-hearted way of going about coaching and caring for people. And, it just is, it's a privilege to be friends with you guys.
Well, it's really been a blessing to, what do I want to say? Have had so many jobs because a lot of people would look at it as, oh, you had to move 13 times in 26 years and all of that.
And not sometimes, folks, you got to understand, sometimes not moving with your husband because you're committed to your family and your kids and school. And I remember coming to Tampa and hanging out with you guys that one time. And I don't know, I think, wasn't John in Washington at that point? He was home from Oregon
State. He was at Oregon State, and we did not.
And then,
it was Oregon State, Tampa, Florida. Which one should we?
Yeah, and even with John's short stint at the University of Richmond, right? Wow, I was so excited about that because you guys were going to be close again, and then off he went to Lafayette, which is great because quite honestly, I have a lot of family that went to Lafayette. My dad's side of his family, a bunch of them were Lafayette and Lehigh folks. Dad went to Princeton, so anyway, a lot of people say, "Who's Lafayette? What's Lafayette?" And I'm always going, "Oh gosh, I've known about Lafayette since I was a little kid." So,
well, he feels very, very honored to actually be here, and he's having a great time as a head coach. So we're thankful for that. But so obviously everybody knows now. So we've been friends just through all the different cities that John and I have lived in. But I actually don't know that much about you and your childhood. How'd you grow up? Are you from Virginia? How has your childhood helped shape who you are today?
I'm always grateful when people ask me that question because I get to, give a shout out to my mom and dad. My dad was a military guy. He went to Princeton because his eyes weren't good enough to allow him to go to West Point. So he went to Princeton and went into the Army ROTC and ultimately became the first, I think this is correct, the first 4-star Army general who, one, graduated from Princeton ROTC, but also who hadn't gone to West Point. And so Dad just had an amazing career. At times he thought it was over and then something else would happen. And so I was fortunate. I was born in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, lived there just for a little bit. Then we moved back to Annandale, Northern Virginia, until I was 8. And then Dad got transferred to Hawaii, which was a great, opportunity. So from 8 to 12, I lived in Hawaii. I didn't wear shoes except for to play sports. We didn't even have to wear shoes to school. It was awesome. And then we moved back to Annandale, and Dad had a 4-year tour. And then he went to Korea for a year where we didn't go, kind of like John going someplace and you guys staying. And then he came back for 4 more years. So I was fortunate from my 6th grade summer till my junior year in college. I lived in the same house in Annandale and had somewhat of a different military experience than a lot of military brats have. And then when they moved again back to Hawaii, that's when I decided I needed to put my roots down. So Charlottesville became my home. I'm one of 6 kids. And again, going back to just, shout out to mom and dad, they're both gone now. But I'm trying to live out the legacy they created each and every day. They were both very different people, but I thankfully got a little bit of both of them and try to live my life in a way that continues their legacy, as do my other 3 brothers and 2 sisters. We're all very different, but we're all very committed to making a difference in the world and in our own ways. And so anyway, I put my roots down in Charlottesville in 1973, I guess, when I was 3rd year in college, and finished college, got my master's. Was a physical education major, thought I was going to teach and coach. Got my master's in counselor education so that once I got done teaching and coaching, I could be a guidance counselor. And then just got the opportunity out of the blue to become the Young Life Area Director in Charlottesville. So I was the first Young Life Area Director in Charlottesville in 1976 for 4 years. And in that time, got married and to Dottie. And 1980, we made the decision that it was time for me to do something different. And I went back to teaching and coaching. And for those of you that know about late 70s, 80s, it was absolutely affirmative action time period. And I wasn't a person of color and I wasn't a woman. And so the jobs that I thought I was going to get, I didn't get. And quite honestly, I understood why. And so there was not any, real bitterness to that. In fact, I really believe that, God had a plan. Of course he does. And so I went into sales, selling office supplies and furniture for a good friend here in Charlottesville. Found that I was very good at it, but I couldn't see myself doing this for the rest of my life, selling pencils and desks and things like that.
Right.
And so ended up getting my real estate license in 1982. And that's what I've been doing ever since. I sold for 3 years and then got into management. I've been managing or senior managing real estate companies since 1986.
Wow. That's incredible. Well, you obviously loved people. You love to be around people, and what a great business to impact lives. And I really look at everything that people do as impacting lives, because I know my husband will come home and he'll go, well, my best friend, he just delivered 4 babies today and all I did was coach football. Or I sold houses. But really, when you look at it, a home is one of the most important things that anybody, that's your foundation of growing up, of your memories, of where you form a lot of your character. So I think that, what a wonderful business to be in. So,
it really is a fantastic business for the exact reasons you said. You really are helping people with most people, the biggest financial decision they ever make. And for me now, again, PE major, master's in counseling, I teach, I coach, and I counsel every day. So everything that I learned through college, it doesn't go to waste. I've got, close to 100 people that work here at this company, and they're expecting me to lift them up every day, encourage them, motivate them toward doing the best they can. We have a tremendous reputation in the marketplace of quality service in a professional way. And I think it just starts with, like your husband, leading with a servant heart and having people really know that maybe they don't like the fact that they're not starting, or that I make a decision in my company that we're going to do this rather than this, but having people trust that you're making those decisions because it's the best thing for everybody. And for the long term, there are a lot of things you can do short term, and that's great. But the long term is, at the end of the day, that real estate's a cyclical business, and as it's been great, it will not be great at some point, and you've got to be in a position to withstand, the challenges, the storms that come your way, and that goes back to that whole character thing, for sure. And for me, as you know, I went through a pretty significant health challenge a couple of years ago now called Guillain Barre Syndrome, where I was fine one day and the next day I couldn't move anything but my head for 17 days. And it's a compromised immune system. They don't know why it happens, but they know it's virus induced. And, once they diagnosed it and treated me and things, thankfully 17, 18 days later, my arms started to move again. And I spent 43 days in a rehab center, getting strong enough to be able to walk out, which in some ways miraculous, because they said it was going to be August when I get out, and I literally walked out at the end of April. So I had an incredible recovery. I don't in any way take light of the fact that lots of people were praying for me and caring for Dottie and me and my family during that time. But I also had a crackerjack group of physical therapists that knew that I wanted to get better, and that all I kept on asking them is, what's next? What's next? And I was their perfect patient, because I wasn't one of the people that said, I don't want to do this today. I was saying, let's go. Let's make this happen. But the point of all that is, going back to the character thing, Honor, is that, I've been a person of faith since I was in high school. I became a Christian through Young Life. I've been a person of faith. I certainly have grown, matured in that faith. I was a knucklehead at times during that time period, for sure. But not until the Guillain Barre, where I really was in a challenge of one that I'd never experienced before, did I realize how real my faith was. And that instead of this, why me, or, whatever, it was this, okay, we got this. I know you're with me. show me how you want me to be the best I can be in the midst of one, getting better, but also, caring for people around me and letting people see God's presence in my life, even in the midst of adversity.
Well, I'll tell you, I was question I was going to ask, and you just answered it, is, life can throw you a curveball, right? And propel you kind of in a different direction in your life. I imagine first of all, can you take us through that? Like, what actually happened? Did you just couldn't feel your arm one day? Like, can you tell us a little bit about your story? Because I can't imagine the fear that we're going through.
It was really interesting. I had a cold that just wouldn't go away. And I went to the doctor on a Wednesday or Thursday. It was right at the end of February of 2019. I went to the doctor. The doctor said, looks like you've had a cold, but it's nothing big deal. Just, take it easy, blah, blah. We had our big awards event that Thursday night, which obviously created a lot of stress and anxiety and took a lot out of me. But I as we do, pushed through. And then on Friday, I was walking up the hill to my office and got to the steps, and we've got 7 or 8 steps leading into the building. And it was like my feet were in concrete buckets. It was like I could barely move my foot onto the next step. And I got inside and I called my doctor and I said, there's something wrong here. And I explained what the symptoms and everything. And they said, you need to go to the ER. So Dottie and I went to one of the hospitals here in Charlottesville. And, it was right in the middle of flu season and everything. So it was just a nightmare in the ER. It took forever to see me be seen. But anyway, they gave me some, took tests, took blood, gave me IV, which I don't even remember I was getting IV. Dottie had to tell me that later. We were telling the story, a while back, and Dottie said, well, Michael, you had 2 different bags of, liquid put in you. I said, I don't remember that at all. I just remember going into the bathroom and not having a hard time getting up, from the toilet. It was like my legs just weren't working. So anyway, they diagnosed it the same way, that there was something going on, but, it looked like you were getting better. And I even said, hey, there's a basketball game tomorrow. Can I go? Because we had friends coming from Williamsburg who I'd met at a prayer breakfast in Richmond, a really good guy. He was the chaplain of the Navy SEALs, a phenomenal guy. They were coming up to go to the game. I'd gotten them good tickets, so they're going to be surprised as to where they were sitting and everything. And they said, yeah, as long as you feel okay, great. So we went home. Thankfully, I didn't drive home. We left my car at the ER, got home, got out of the car. I took 1 step to go up the 3 steps into my house from the garage, and I literally collapsed. And I had no legs. Now, we are the idiot family. That's what we call ourselves, our knucklehead family. We should have dialed 911 right then, but I army crawled myself into the house and got on the couch. And I said, I'm just probably dehydrated. I'll be fine in the morning. And so I stayed on the couch in the morning. Well, by the time the next morning, I still, if anything, I felt worse. So we called a couple of buddies. They came over. They got me up off the couch, had my arms over their shoulders. And I literally was at that point, 215 pounds of dead weight. And Dave looked at John and John looked at Dave, and all 3 of them at the same time said, ambulance? And they said, yeah, because they were afraid we were all going to get hurt trying to get me out, because I just was literally dead weight. Anyway, long story made short, ambulance comes, they take me to UVA, which is where I wanted to go. And within about half an hour, 45 minutes, the ER doc, the resident, had it diagnosed. He pretty much thought that I had Guillain Barre Syndrome. And one of the reasons was that they'd had a couple med students that had experienced it a few months before. So he'd seen the signs. And mine was so fast because, like I said, it started my feet, went to my legs. And by the time I got to ER, I was barely moving my arms. And then by the time they admitted me into the ICU, all I had was my head. Thankfully, and just so everybody knows, I'm not totally brave and courageous. When the doctor came in to the hospital room, I thought it was that same afternoon. Dottie thinks it was the next day. He said, I just want you to know you've got a 78% chance of being on a ventilator tomorrow. This is progressing so quickly, and it's a nerve system where it stops communicating with the muscles, and your diaphragm is a muscle. And that's the only time I cried. because I just did not want to be incubated and have that. That just freaked me out. So that was the only time I cried, the whole time. And I said to the doctor, I said, that's not going to happen. And if Dottie was on this podcast, she would be laughing right now, because she would say, she nodded at me like, yeah. And then, but in her head, she's going like, you have any choice in that? And so again, lots of people praying, my willpower. Thankfully, I didn't have to be ventilated. And I stayed paralyzed much longer than normal, almost 17 days. But once, so the other story, I don't mean to elongate this, but
no, I love this.
When they came to us and told us they were discharging us, I looked at Dottie and said, what do you mean they're going to discharge me? And they said, well, you need to go to a rehab center. And I said, what are you going to rehab? I mean, I had two little fingers on my right hand, and my toes on my right foot moved a little bit. I said, what are we doing here? How are they going to do anything? Right. And again, I think it's a God moment. Other people may think it's just a coincidence, but a rehab guy, I'm the head of the physical therapy team at UVA, came in to see me. He had been gone for most of the time that I was in the hospital. And he came in, he was the last person to come through, whatever they call that, rounds. Mm-hmm. He said, how you doing? I said, well, can't move, but I'm doing okay. He said, what's the plan? I said, well, they're sending me to a rehab center. And he got this weird look on his face. And I said, okay, tell me about the weird look on your face. He said, I don't think it's a good idea for you to go over to UVA's rehab center, because the way your insurance is set up, by the time you start moving again, you will have used up all your days. So we need to get you into a different type of facility. And so thankfully, I have a good friend here in Charlottesville who does senior care. And so I reached out to Jeannie and said, Jean, where do I go? And she gave us a couple of different options. And so my daughter and my wife went and did field trips to the rehab centers, and we decided on Almaroe Rehab, and it was a really, really good choice. And so again, I think that was March 13th, I think, at that point. So it'd been 12 days, and it was another 5 days, before I started moving. I think I got that right. But, and then again, slowly but surely, everything started to come back. And I still go back to the rehab center. Couldn't do it during COVID, but I still go back to, make sure I talk to people and thank people and tell people I'm still doing great, because I just feel so grateful for what they did. And, my blog that you referenced, thankfulinallthings.com. I wrote about this woman, Teresa, a few months ago, when I found out she died of cancer. I had no idea she was sick, because during COVID, I couldn't go in and visit her. She was like a guardian angel for me. She just took me on. She loved me. She wouldn't let anybody help me other than her when she was on rounds, because we just had this really special relationship. And I wrote about her and about how God sends people into your life at certain times. And, that's the thing, Honor, for you in doing these podcasts and starting out this brand new thing. I guess it's been about a year now, right?
The podcast has been about a year. It started a couple of years ago. Yeah. Yeah.
And so making that decision to do that, really brave, stepping out of your comfort zone to do different things. I know your personality. I know how you are. Folks, you got to understand that this is not her. She feels called to this, and that's why she's doing it. Well, the same thing happened with me when I started trying to process all I'd been through and what I'd learned. Somebody said, you ought to write about it. And so I started this blog called thankfulinallthings.com, because that's how I try to stay. I try to stay thankful in all things, even in the midst of, and it's, thankfulinallthings.com, lessons learned through adversity is sort of the subtitle. And so it's been about a year now. I think I started it in October of 2020. And I'm not a writer. I'm a speaker, been a motivational speaker and a teacher, but it's all, 8 words on a piece of paper. And then I just sort of extemporaneously, share what my thoughts are, and 20 minutes goes by and I'm done, or 30 minutes or whatever. And so writing is a completely different thing, because I'm so intimidated by, grammar and flow and all these kind of things. And so I'm trying to write once a week. I have a good friend, Pamela Bunn, who went to UVA and who writes another blog, and she writes every day. Wow. I don't even know how she does it. they're so wonderful. You know, I think it's called As for the Rain and Snow. Honor, you would love it. It's
I'll have to look it up.
an amazing blog. But anyway, the point being is once a week, 2 weeks at the most, I try to sit down and write what God is kind of sharing with me at this particular point. And it's been wonderful. It's been a real blessing. But at the same time, you know, I send this thing out, you know, to people, and I just sort of wait for Dottie to read it and tell me what she thinks, you know, because she's the writer in the family and, you know, understand, you know, and so I really kind of wait for her to say, hey, I read it. It's great. Oh, Michael, this was really good. You know, that kind of thing. But going back to what we said at the very beginning, you know, I'll get just one person sends me something back saying, I read this today and that's exactly what I needed to hear today or whatever. And that makes it all worth it, whether it's one person or a million people. And I know you feel the same way.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think about all that you've gone through, and I always try to realize that life is happening for me, right? It's not happening to me, it's happening for me. So one of my favorite sayings is, what I'm experiencing right now is the perfect curriculum for my growth. You had to say, why me? Why is this happening? If not, that shows the maturity and where you've come in your
So the way I'd answer that, Honor, is one, I can honestly say I never said why me once. I don't know why. I'm not trying to, you know, pat myself on the back. It just never was in my vocabulary. However, the nights were awful. I couldn't move. I couldn't get comfortable. So I'd go to sleep for like 20 minutes and they'd have to position all these pillows and everything. And thankfully I have really wonderful friends. I had somebody spend the night with me every night, either in the hospital or in rehab, so that Dottie could go home and get good rest. And so we had this routine set up. But, you know, every 20 minutes I'd wake up and these pillows on her felt like boulders because I couldn't move them. And I'm a little bit claustrophobic. And so at night, I literally just wait. I don't know why, but whatever reason, being paralyzed in the day was better than being paralyzed at night. Maybe because I'm supposed to be sleeping, I don't know, but I just would watch the clock. You know, please let it get to, you know, people starting to move around again in the hospital and things like that. But I had such great friends, my brothers, my sisters, you know, everybody came in and pitched in. But on the other side of that, it was hard. I didn't ever ask why me, and I can't tell you why that, but I can tell you it was really hard. And one of the things that was really interesting, and I don't know if you've experienced this with launching what you've done over the last couple of years, but I had one friend come in one day and say to me, Michael, I don't mean to put pressure on you, but I want you to know lots of people are watching how you handle this because they see you as a person that has had a good life, has a wonderful wife, kids, grandkids, your business, you've been successful as a business person, you know, blah, blah. You haven't really had a lot of, you know, serious stuff happen in your life, which is probably true. But they said, you know, there are people that are watching to see, is your faith real? And quite honestly, he said there are people that are hoping that they'll see that it's not. They'll see a bitterness or they'll see a whatever. And that was mind-boggling to me. I was grateful that person told me that because it just shined a light on the fact that we are to be lights to the world, right? We are to be salt, and so it just sort of invigorated me more that I needed to be who God wanted me to be in this situation. And Dottie and I had it all sorted out. She was responsible for the visitors and the other patients in the rehab. And my job was to love up on the care team because I just didn't have but so much energy. And so I wanted to really love up and serve the people that were serving me. And then she became the gatekeeper. I mean, she did, giving her a shout out when we left the rehab, everybody was so happy to see us leave and, you know, that it went so well. And the head of the rehab center stopped us in the hall. And she said to Dottie, I want you to know something. She said, I have never seen somebody fiercely support their man or their spouse in such a gracious manner. She said, you were always forthright. You were always on point, but you never were ungracious. And she said, that just doesn't happen in places like this. People want to scream and yell and blah, blah, blah. And yet it wasn't that you were being mamby-pamby about it, but you were always so gracious in the way that you went about pushing us to do whatever or getting what Michael needed. And I don't think there's a greater compliment that could have been given to her. I mean, it was just such a amazing thing for that person, not only to have experienced it, but to have shared it with her.
Well, and you two are an amazing team together. And I think that's why John and I have so much love and respect for the two of you. It's really interesting what you said about people watching you and what you're doing, because I look at my life too. I haven't had huge adversity. It depends on how you look at it.
Yep.
You know, if I say, oh, I've had to raise 4 kids and move them all over the country every time we have a job every 2 years, that could be hard. But real adversity we haven't had. I grew up in a loving home. So did John. We have wonderful friends and family. And sometimes I think more so than other people, it's what's in my own head of, Honor, you just need to be thankful that you have a nice family and you raised kids, and that's that. I'm like, well, but I believe I'm still breathing. As long as I have a breath in my body, God made me for more, not to lessen being a mom, being a wife, raising kids, but I know God has more in me. I have so many interests in so many things. So my thing is, I want to tell people, you're never too old and it's never too late. If there are passions that God's put in your heart, like, take the action.
I've been having that same sort of thought process, and obviously I'm older than you guys, but in the blog just a few weeks ago, I wrote this blog about I'm just a nobody trying to make others feel like they're somebody, right? And where that came from was I have all these great ideas and lofty goals, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and that kind of thing, and some of them have, but many of them haven't. And what it's taught me, or what the Lord has taught me in that place, is that I'm to be humble before Him, and that my responsibility is to lift others up. And so, if there's a word that somebody says, describe yourself in one word, I think most people would use the word connector with me. That I am somebody that knows a lot of people, and I'll hear what they're trying to do or whatever, and say, oh, well, you need to meet Jimmy, or you need to get with this person or whatever. And out of that came this blog about I'm just nobody trying to help other people be somebody. And it wasn't supposed to be, it was kind of, humorous, but it wasn't trying to be as much self-deprecating as to communicate something that, yes, we have to move toward things, but that doesn't mean that it's what's going to happen. And it's one of the issues that I have with Clubhouse and, Facebook and things like that, is that so many of the rooms and things are talking about, the only reason you don't have the wealth is because you don't go for it as hard as you can go for it, or you don't have this because you're doing this. And when I get the opportunity to speak, I kind of am the anti by saying, we want to have, Lord, give us our daily bread for sure. And yes, we have the opportunity to live our lives in abundance. But when you look at the scripture doesn't talk about if you do this, then you get this. In fact, he says that more lessons are going to be learned in adversity than they are in blessing, and that we're going to face adversity. And so I always kind of push back on the people that, you say, well, you just do this, this, and this, and you're going to have all this. Because you may, and good for you, but it may not be the course that, Amy Grant's old song, that I used in the blog this week, a light unto my feet, it may be the path that God has in store for you is very different. And my Guillain Barre path was certainly not one that I ever expected, but I will say this to you and to people listening. It was a path that I hope I never have to take again, but that I'm grateful that I traveled. And what I mean by that is that I now have a credibility to speak into other people's sorrow and adversity and pain that I never had before, because they know what I went through, And therefore, it's not like, oh, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Now they say, oh, you do have an idea of what I'm talking about. And for me, I think it's given me a voice and a platform. I don't know for how long, a season, where I can share in people's lives in a way that I couldn't have 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's what it's really all about. And I've learned too, when things come into my life or I get these ideas, and they're not always ideas for me. Maybe it is for me to connect someone else to that. Maybe it's for me to share that idea with someone else because they're supposed to do it, not me. And so really being able to discern, God, what do you have for me? And what is it? How am I supposed to bless others at the same time? But so yes, the road to entrepreneurship is not easy. I will tell you that, but it's definitely worth it. It's really more of a growth for myself than anything else. But I wanted to ask you a couple more questions. I want to be respectful of your time, but
yeah, before you ask me questions, let me just encourage you in one way in regards to entrepreneurship not being easy. The thing I will share with you as I thought about myself back in 1982 when I started real estate is, this is a business I can do my way, in the way that the Lord wants me to do it. And if I can't do it my way and in the way that is obedient to the Lord, then it's not to be. Right. And I can say 40, however many years later, that's absolutely true. And so I want to encourage you in the same way that the entrepreneurial, be bold in living and going out after it the way that the Lord wants you to do it, knowing that you can do it His way, not your way, and still be successful. And I think that's so important. That the beautiful thing about, and I deal with it every day with my agents. Every agent that comes in here is opening up their own business under our umbrella. And my job is to create a culture and environment that allows their business to grow in the way they want it to grow, right? So just be grateful of the fact that you can do it your way and with a servant heart and with a lot of hard work, right? It can be successful in a way that you are empowered by it every day and get something from it. So anyway, just a second thought there.
No, that's great. And I'll say, when I started, as a woman of faith and trying to start a business, but also having researched, and I've also dove into NLP, I've dove into energy, all these different kind of scientific things, because as a health coach, I want to know the science as well. And having people tell me, you can't be a Christian and believe in energy, you can't do this. And it was so interesting. It's been such a great journey for me to go, well, wait a minute. God created everything. So He created energy. I'm not comparing the two as equal. I'm saying He's created more things probably that we can't see that are amazing that we can. It's that level of faith of knowing that He knows more than we do, right? and not letting people really attack me on that. That my love for the Lord is somehow different because I believe in energy. It's really just a scientific thing. And it's about your mindset and your thoughts and how that's a beautiful system that God has created, just like He's created everything else in the world. So I don't, it's where your heart is and who you're worshiping is where, as long as you've got that straight. So it's been an interesting thing to have people kind of question what you do or how you're doing it.
Yeah.
I'm the first to say I'm not perfect, and I may change my mind at some time if God gives me that conviction, right? So We're all on our own journey and we're all at a different spot. But talking about health, I wanted to ask you, because right now you've just gone through this huge health situation and you've come out on the other end. I believe that health is one of the most important things because God has given us this physical body to experience life in. We're spiritual, the Holy Spirit's inside of us, and we literally have this amazing body to experience all the five senses: touch, feel, that some of the things that you couldn't do. I feel like if you don't have health, there's no way to succeed. And what I mean by that is even if you do succeed, you won't be able to sustain it, because health, you taking a good care of your body and your temple really makes you able to fulfill whatever God has for you. What are your thoughts on your health and what you're trying to do right now for your own,
So I appreciate the question, because I determined my recovery. I named it the 180 Project. And the 180 Project had a double meaning. One was I was going to do things 180 degrees different, from going from paralyzed to being as active as I could be, right?
Right.
The other thing and joking, but it's true, I went on the Guillain Barre Syndrome diet plan. When I went into the hospital, I was 214 pounds, way over what I needed to be. And I had made a decision. This was March, right? End of February, March. I made a decision at the beginning of January that I was going to weigh 190 by the end of the year. I just wasn't specific enough with the Lord in regards to what that goal looked like. Because by the time I got to rehab, 13 days after going to the hospital, I was down to 192. I lost 22 pounds.
Wow.
Just from laying there and muscle atrophy and that kind of thing. And so I was 2 pounds away from my goal, not really the way that I had planned it. And I do have a 1-800 number, 1-800 Guillain Barre, that if you want to sign up for it, you can, but nobody's called the number yet. So anyway, when I got to 192, realized that I made a goal that I was going to not gain that weight back. And in fact, that I was going to get to at least 185. And ultimately, 180 would be great. And so I named it the 180 plan for two different reasons. And so the point being is, since coming out of rehab, I have been very, very diligent about my exercise, about my routines. And this morning I weighed 185.7. My wife laughs at me a little bit about the fact that, I'm on the scale every morning because I chart it, in my calendar, because it's this goal that I have. The point being is I've kept 30 pounds off since it. And here's the one thing I would say to folks that are listening and kind of things that you're coaching people on. Routine is absolutely critical. I had no idea until I started recovering how much a routine makes a difference. And so now 2.5 years later, or 2 years later, for the most part, because of by the time I started recover, I've been pretty much on the same routine. The thing I didn't realize was two things. One is the routine is so important because my body knows when I need to be most energetic. And it's in the morning, and then it starts to shut down, and I take my little 20-minute siesta and whatever you want to call it, and I come back in and I go at it, and whatever. That's the first thing. And I'm going to tell everybody that's listening, that may not be your routine, but a routine has made such a critical difference in my life. The second thing, which I did just totally without knowing it, is I went on an intermittent fast program. Because when I went upstairs at 7:00 to sit in my chair in our bedroom, the peanuts and the ice cream and the things that I used to go while we were watching a show or something, I go and get at 8, 9 o'clock at night, all I had upstairs was water. And so from 7:00 until my smoothie at 8 or 9 o'clock the next morning, I didn't eat. And so I literally put myself on a 12 or 13 hour intermittent fast, which I think has had a lot to do with me, even when I can't get the exercise I need to get, with maintaining weight, along with being smart. Dottie's a great cook, but she's very, very smart about, what we eat. Obviously, I try to be careful with not a lot of alcohol, not only one, because I don't want to drink a lot of alcohol, but two, it's got a lot of sugar in it. And so anyway, in answering your question, those are the two things for me: routine. And then because of the routine, having this intermittent fast in place has made all the difference in the world in me being, I truly believe, other than obviously being smart, wearing a mask, keeping myself from distance, I really believe that the routine and the way I'm living my life in a healthy manner now is why I haven't even had a cold in over 2 years. So that's how I'd answer your question.
No, that's amazing. And I will say I've had the most success with any of my clients is through intermittent fasting and cutting sugar out, because those are sugar. Obviously, it feeds cancer. It does so much. It leads to prediabetes. Brain fog. It can contribute to Alzheimer's. So many things. It doesn't really do anything good for your body. So obviously, we have to have some, but we can get that through carbs through the carbs we have in vegetables and other different sources. But
well, it's kind of like that. I used to tell my kids, and I'm sure you guys told your kids this as well in some way, but I would say to them, short-term pleasure leads to long-term pain. And sometimes it would be that they didn't do their homework because they were watching a TV show, or they went someplace they shouldn't have gone thinking that they were going to have fun and got caught. And so this short-term pleasure equaled long-term gain. It was sort of one of our mantras in our family. And I think it's true about our bodies as well. There's a lot of things we can do, short-term. And I know for myself, since I've done this, I'll have something or eat something extra that I should have eaten, and I just don't feel as good. My body just, responds to it in a very different way now.
Well, if we do get on a routine and we start taking care of ourselves, our bodies are so in tune to give us messages if we just listen. I think we've kind of numbed it down so much that we can't always hear the signals that our body's giving us. I'm gonna ask you 2 more questions before we end, but this is kind of broad, so you can take it anywhere you want. But what would you say is your biggest lesson in life so far?
My biggest lesson, and it comes back to my dad and my mom and dad, and my dad. Dad, when I was young, was working his way up. And so he all he got to do when I was young was say yes, sir, to somebody. So if they told him he had to stay late to work, he had to stay late to work. Yes, sir. By the time my dad got to the 4 stars, my younger brothers and sisters had a very different lifestyle than we did. And so, for me, early on, I could count pretty much on 1-2 hands the games, the events that my dad was able to see me play. He would leave the house, as he woke me up to go do the paper route, he'd leave and he'd come home kind of when I was going to bed. And so one of the big life lessons for me was that my kids were going to count on 1 or 2 hands the things I didn't see versus the things I did see. And so early on in our marriage and in our, raising the kids, that was a priority. I just, I sacrificed other things to make sure that was the case. And the add on to that, to give Dottie the credit, I truly, truly believe that people need to learn how to time block, that they need to look at their calendar, and a simple exercise that I would give people is take a week at a glance, just Sunday through Saturday, 2 pages, 15-minute increments. And just for a couple of weeks, sit down 3 or 4 times a day and just fill in the blocks of how you spent those 15 minutes. You're going to see how you spend your time. You're going to see that there's more time that you have to do things than you really think. But then from there, you learn, I teach my agents how to do what's called the non-negotiables. And once you've time blocked, what we did, and this was Dottie's idea, we sat down at the beginning of the week and we looked at the calendar, and she told me where the non-negotiables were. That from 5:30 to 7:30, she wanted me home to help with the kids when they were 2.5 and 6 months old. Because, as you know, it's crazy at that time. Sundays, she wanted us to be at church together. If there was a gourmet club in the neighborhood, she wanted that on the calendar. That those were things that I absolutely had in my calendar. And the cool thing, and what people will learn from this, is when you do that, one, you let your spouse know, you let your kids know they're number one in your mindset. It's not that you're not working a lot more hours than you are spending time with them, but the things that they need you at, they know you're going to be there. And so you're showing them that they're number one. The second thing is, from my perspective, is it makes me much better at work knowing that Dottie has freed me up to be there because she knows I'm going to be home at 5:30.
Right.
She knows I'm going to be at church, and if I'm consistent with that. So anyway, the life lesson I learned is, one, that your family needs to be God first, family second, and you don't get a second chance at that, right? And then 2, the way I would encourage people to do it is to really time block and put that stuff in first before you put anything else in your calendar during the week.
Yeah, time blocking has been a game changer for me because I will admit that raising 4 kids, it was literally running around like a chicken with my head cut off. And I had a choice. I wasn't mature enough or didn't have the resources or didn't listen to mentors that told me. But now that I'm older and I've learned the value of time blocking, it's tremendous. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And so tell me how do people find you if they maybe they want you to come speak to them, to their group or to their business, or what's the best way for someone to reach out to you?
Well, again, they can go to the blog, thankfulinallthings.com, and it's got a place at the bottom where you can subscribe or send a message or whatever. The other way I'd go is LinkedIn. I've tried to be pretty intentional with LinkedIn. LinkedIn.com/IN/MRG7175. That'll take you to my profile, and it gives you all the information about the things that I've done. And it also, I've been pretty intentional about asking people to write recommendations in there. When I teach and I get good feedback, I ask, would you please send a recommendation so they can read through, my real estate training stuff, but also my motivational speaking. And so those are probably the two places if, they can get a feel for me, obviously with the thankfulinallthings.com and see kind of the message I can bring, but I can do it on a faith-based manner or a secular manner. Absolutely, for sure. So those are probably the two best ways. I mean, obviously I'm on Facebook, and Instagram, same thing, MRG7175. I'm having some fun with that right now, where I'm doing a haiku every morning, where I take a photo of something and I create a haiku, and that goes out every morning on Instagram. It's something I challenge my agents to do a while back. Pick something and do it consistently, and see how much your followers increase. And but yeah, LinkedIn. LinkedIn.com/IN/MRG7175, and then thankfulinallthings.com. And then, for the story about Guillain Barre, you can go to CaringBridge. We still have that up. Haven't posted in there recently. I try to do an update just every so often, but it's caringbridge.org and then /Michael Guthrie. And you can go back and learn about kind of things I said early on in this, and kind of get not a day by day, but every few days sort of knock down, drag out what we went through and all the blessings that we got and all the adversity we faced.
Well, I'll let all of our listeners know that however you see this, if you go to YouTube and you see the video, or if you go to Spotify, Apple, Anchor, wherever you listen to podcasts, I'll put all of Michael's information and all his links below that. So you'll be able to easily contact him, or you can reach out to me if you need to get to him as well. So we're so grateful for you being here. But I want to ask you, what's on the horizon next? So everybody's got a vision for your future. Is there a book?
That's a great question. I would say the book is probably percolating. The question is, what is the book? I've had some people talking to me about it, and my thought, quite honestly, I've been doing the blog for a year now, and I've been sending something out on Facebook for I don't know how many years, like 5 years. I mean, I've started sending the text to people like John Garrett every morning, like to your husband every morning, and out of that, said, well, why don't I just post this on Facebook? And so I started doing that, and on Twitter, and so I've got all the sort of material to go back and do it. My thought is that I'm thinking about doing some sort of devotional that some, kind of like not that I'm saying it's going to be that, but kind of like a Jesus is Calling or something that, but from a layman's point of view, I'm not an Oswald Chambers. I love Utmost for His Highest, and I read it for years and years. But, something that comes from a common day, nobody trying to help somebody be somebody, as to lessons that I've learned. And I think I've got enough to do, 365 of them now. And it's just a matter of finding the time. And, but I would love to do that. I know it's in me. It's just a matter of sitting down and being intentional about doing it a little bit, and then get into some people and say, hey, what do you guys think? Does this resonate? Do you think people would be interested in reading this? And, I'm kind of testing it right now with the blog, obviously, because, we've got a few hundred people that subscribe to the blog, and probably as many as, 600 or so that are going to it on a, 30-day basis kind of thing. So I've got some, followers who seem to like it because they're following it. And so that's probably what's next. But the other thing is I just really want to be, I'm almost 69 years old. And I just want to, I know where I'm going. I'm not worried about that, but I want to make sure I get to see as much as I can as far as the kids and the grandkids.
Absolutely.
None of our parents got to see any of our kids get married. And so that's a simple little goal. But one of our Dottie's and my goals is that we want to walk down the aisle as the grandparents. And not that we're trying to get them married. The oldest is only 8. We got a ways to go, but it's another priority as to why to stay healthy.
Absolutely.
She's 8. I mean, if she gets married at 25, 17, I'm 86 at that point. So I don't think I'm going to be Moses in the number of years I get. So trying to be intentional about the years I have left.
Well, you have set such an amazing example, because you're in great shape and you've got the routine and you're making an impact. And I will tell you, I have a friend that I actually helped coach last year, and he does a devotional, and he put his 365 and made it a book that came out last Christmas. Such a great Christmas gift to give people. So I think what you have would be amazing. So if you're wanting like a sign, this is it. So go.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it. Yeah.
But anyway, so that's about it. But I love to end each podcast with the same question for every guest. This podcast is called the Honor It All podcast. And so what are you choosing to honor today?
I would honor my wife. I would honor, and I'm not trying to be, slack about that. I love the word cherish, because cherish is one of those words that it just sounds like what it is, right? And we've got a corner cabinet that has been handed down to the oldest son for 3 or 4 generations now, and I'm the oldest son, so it's in our dining room. My son will get it at some point. But she has these little teacups and saucers that, came from her side of the family generations. And Kate, who's our oldest granddaughter, will come over, and she said, can we have a tea party? And can we use the special teacup and saucer? And I watched Dottie take those out of the cupboard and sit down, and they're very special. And she's willing, she doesn't want them to break, but she's willing to risk that for Kate. And in that when she did that the first time, I got this picture of what it means to cherish somebody and hold them gently so that you don't crush them, but at the same time, honor them in the way that you go about living your life. And so I'm absolutely grateful for her. She's had to go through the Guillain Barre with me, and she had to go through COVID with me with the immune system disorder. She's a champion. She's the guard dog. And I'm just grateful. So that's absolutely who jumps into my head first.
Well, that's beautiful. I mean, what a wonderful way to complete this episode with the inspiring Michael Guthrie. I really appreciate you, Michael. And until next time, remember, we are not promised tomorrow. So be present today. That is the gift, and take time to honor it all. Thank you.
Amen.